trying out a paint that I got a sample of. There are professional grade paints called QoR, QoR. So I'm going to give my interpretation with the colors that I have. So I'm going to start with the background, and I'm going to go to the foreground, and I'm mixing up a little bit of ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna. The sky is on the grayer side. I did wet the sky ever so slightly. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add the yellow and a little bit of the red to get my orange that I need. The orange or the red is quite vibrant, so I'm going to add a little bit more yellow here. And I'm going to start by painting up into the sky here with the trees. So we're always worried about the masses, not the small things. So I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to it as I come down. It's a pretty good color.
So the QoR brand is made by Golden Paints.
Yes.
And we saw the one of the representatives for the Midwest was at the Watercolor Society of Indiana down in Indianapolis. They had their meeting, and she gave out samples, and we won this. Valerie is the rep, Valerie Allen. She's from Michigan. And she said this is a professional grade paint. They do not have student grade at Golden. And also, they add more pigment. We've had Sandy Bacon from Golden come and talk to Ileana Artists. And she saw the group about 4 years ago and talked about the excitement at Golden about this new watercolor paint that they were introducing down in New Orleans, where their big presentation. And she also stressed that the colors are vibrant and there's a lot of pigment. So, do you think there's more pigment in this than the other?
It appears to be. A little hard to say until it dries.
So Dale, what watercolor paper are you using right now?
I am using the indigo paper, handmade from India, cold press. It's 240 pound.
And you haven't changed your brushes or anything,
Nope.
so you're comparing apples to apples.
Yep. So I'm just going in with the toothbrush and adding a little extra color up in the sky, and I don't have to brush over what has been laid in, so I don't pick up anything. So I'm layering things in here to not have to disturb the pigment that I've already been putting on.
And if any of you know Dale and his humor,
This is my wife's toothbrush. I always clean it before I put it back. If you are a young lady coming to class, use your husband's or boyfriend's and then put it back. So now I'm going in with a little bit of pure burnt sienna.
Now, so far, this is about 5.5 minutes.
And I'm going to go with a toothbrush to soften that, let it run, and we're going to then go into it one more time. But now it has to dry. Okay, I've tested two colors here. This is the burnt sienna. This is the ultramarine. The burnt sienna here is on the left is at QoR's. This is Talon's on the right. They are two different colors to a certain extent, but they still emulate burnt sienna. Now you'll find that going from one name brand to another, you will see variations of the same color, but it's not quite the same. Now this has a little bit more red in it. This has a little bit more yellow in it. On this side, this is a little bit...
Who is it?
This is Talons. This is QoRs. This is a little bit, I should say, cooler. And the QoRs, this is the Talons, this is the QoRs. This is a tad perhaps warmer. Slight variation. Both the colors are good.
Is that grainy or not?
I don't see any granulation in the thing from one paint to another. I see a little bit more in this.
And that's the Talons.
The Talons than I do in the QoRs. So QoRs is looking good so far compared to other paints. Now, so I'm going to go back into this, and the procedure is always background to foreground, large to small. So I've mixed up here on my palette the yellow that I have and a little bit of the burnt sienna, and I am going to dry brush that onto the paper. To get different variations. I'm going to take a little bit of spray and see how it reacts, just ever so slightly. I want this to flow just a little bit more. I'm going to see how it lifts later on, but right now we got a pretty good vibrant color coming here. Taking a little bit of the alizarin crimson and some of the burnt sienna, mix it up in here, and I'm going to start applying it to some of the darker areas down below here with a little bit of blue. In this type of painting, you can keep for a fairly long time, you can keep it fairly abstract until you need to bring in some of the realism.
Now, where was this picture taken?
This was taken on the Presque Isle River in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, on the middle western side, if you want to give it a direction. I'm using a lot of water here. I want this to be fairly vibrant.
So it's interesting, the Golden Paints has been around, oh, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was like the 1950s, and they were primarily an oil paint company. But they also carry acrylics and a lot of mediums and a lot of textures. Also, in the future, we're going to test their spray varnish that you would spray a watercolor painting with, so you don't need to put glass on it. Dale and I saw that at the, down in St. Louis about 10 years ago. We were at a show, the Arts in the Park, was it?
Yes.
It's the national parks. They don't do the show anymore. It was really great. But, so we did notice people using it down there. So Dale's going to, in the future, we're going to do a little test and see exactly how that works.
And you wouldn't have to put glass on your painting, over your painting.
Now, my question for Valerie was, have they been able to test if it's going to yellow through the course of time? And she said they have a place I think she said down in Florida, where they put
Yes.
the paints out in the sunshine and see how it responds that way, but only time will tell regarding the varnish or the spray if it's gonna yellow. So have you noticed any difference with the paint when you're doing dry brush to?
No, it reacts the same way as all paints do. One of the things I'm always telling my students, don't buy brands from craft stores. They're usually cheap, they have a lot of chalk in them, and they cause more problems than they're worth. But everything is reacting pretty good.
I remember last year giving some private instruction to a woman, and she brought in her paints, she brought in her papers, everything was cheap, cheap, cheap. Plus she was learning from books. And she said she was just so frustrated. And I know the first thing you said was buy good paper and
get rid of those paints, get good, always good quality paints, always get good quality paper. That means 100% rag paper, which is 100% cotton, and good brushes. Now, a lot of brushes people are using nowadays are synthetics, and I'm not always happy about synthetic, but if that's all available, buy the best synthetic you can get, or they have synthetic blends that you can pick up with partial real hair, partial synthetic.
so this is what you would call the second phase of the painting. You always talk
Yes.
about 3 phases.
Yeah, there's basically 3 phases. This is the second phase where you start building more of the solid masses. I'm gonna use a little bit of red in there.
Wow, look
But
how pretty all
everything's
these colors
mixing,
look.
everything is mixing quite well. I am impressed so far. I've never used this before. Excuse me. But usually I have spent a good amount of time. I've painted this scene once before, which I will show you the difference of.
And that was a demonstration too, wasn't
That was
it?
a demonstration that lasted about an hour and 15 minutes.
And we're about 12 minutes into this painting right now.
Yeah. Well, this is a study,
Yeah.
and you don't want to get overly involved. When you do a study, you want to make sure that you're kind of giving yourself a briefing on what the final painting could look like without going into too much detail. So it becomes a watercolor sketch at this point. But I'm seeing some positive things with these colors, which is good.
Seems like you're laying down some pretty dark darks with it.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah, okay. Now, when you're done painting with this today, can you re-wet that paint and use it a couple days or a week from now?
I usually cover my paints with a damp paper towel, and it's good for a couple days. If I spray the watercolor with just a little bit of water, just a tiny bit, you don't want to over dampen it, and I can use it a day or two later. But after they're fully dry, you really have to put out new paint. And usually I do on top, right on top of the old paint. I don't take any chances because it's only good for tinting at a certain point, not for physically painting.
You won't get the same richness.
You don't get the same richness or flow from the watercolor. And the idea for the watercolor is to make it flow. Now you can tint with it, but you can't physically paint with it. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to lift up a little bit here and there and see. There's always a little bit of a wake, even on a still river, of a little bit of that water hitting the edge there.
So lifting wise, how is the paint reacting?
Seems to be reacting the same way. Every paint has a different lift to it. Some lift very easily, such as earth colors, where some of the staining colors, such as the dark blues and like the alizarin crimsons, they don't lift completely, but you don't want to, because you don't want to have any white of the board showing through anyways. Now, let's get in a little bit darker here.
So you don't really mix them till they become a new color.
I mix them briefly. So when I put down a wash of color, there's several things that come out of the wash color-wise. If you overmix your colors, you end up with one color coming out. So when you put on one color, you have various colors within one brushstroke, which is the best part of the watercolor.
Well, you can't really do that in oil, can you?
You can, but it doesn't flow and mingle. You put it on the canvas, it sits, and you'd have to blend it after that, which you're becoming to have things possibly overworked. But I do have a soft spot in my heart for oils. I started off oil painting.
Maybe someday we'll show you my favorite. He did a polar bear. It was just beautiful.
It'll cost you. Probably the single best painting I ever did in oil painting.
So you'll notice,
Now, mind you, this is just a sketch, so it's not a finished painting, but I was really doing a test on what the watercolor can do, and I'm very happy with the outcome. I'd be anxious to try other colors.
so now let it dry again.
Yeah, I'm going to take it off and dry it. And then I'll show you still on?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what I've done with another brand of paint called Talons, which is a Dutch brand. And you can, even though one's finished and this is just a sketch, you kind of get the idea. In fact, it's pretty dry right now.
And you'll notice we're trying a little experiment. Normally I don't talk, I just film. But we're just trying a new approach. All right.
Now, both paintings were done with watercolor naturally, but not the same colors because I had more color usage in here. But this was the photo I was taking it off of. But this doesn't have the depth that this one does, but I do like the brightness of the color in this one. The yellow in that one I may have overmixed, but this is about an hour and a half, and this has been maybe 15 minutes.
I would say more like 20.
Okay, 20 minutes. But it still has...
So what colors do you think you used on the larger one?
What I used on the larger one was burnt sienna, which I used on this. I used cadmium orange medium, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and
Did you use a sap green or something?
no, the green was made from the blue and the yellow. I can tell that this is much more vibrant than this is.
Yeah.
This has a certain look to it without overworking it. It has really good bones with it. And when you put the color down, it doesn't quite dissipate as much as the Talons does. It actually, you put it down, it stays pretty vibrant. So I'm very happy with that.
So this is the review of QoR paints from Dale. Popovich. There's their logo. Anything else you want to say?
Color for color, I think it's actually very good. I was very happy with it. I like the cleanliness of the color, and also it also has its vibrancy, and it has a nice transparency to it at the same time, which is hard to get with watercolor. So I've got a 2 thumbs up for these colors.